I gave my whole life to give my kids the best. When I got sick, they put me in a nursing home. They said, "We're selling your house. We need the money." But I warned them, and I signed new papers. I always thought I'd be the kind of mother whose children would take care of her in her old age. That's what you do, isn't it? You give everything you have to raise them, and then when the time comes, you expect them to show up when you need them. I'm Margaret Davis. I'm 63 years old now, though sometimes it feels like I've lived much longer than that. I guess I'm still adjusting to the quietness that's crept into my life these days. I wasn't always this way. I remember when I was younger, I had so much energy, so much hope. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, one of those places where everyone knows everyone's business. It was humble, but it was home. My father was a mechanic, and my mother worked as a nurse. They weren't rich, but they were good people. They taught me the value of hard work, and I carried that lesson into my own life. I spent most of my career as a high school English teacher. It wasn't glamorous like being a lawyer or a doctor, but I loved it. I loved watching my students grow, helping them realize their potential. And I loved the summers when I worked at the local library, organizing book clubs and helping kids find their love for reading. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And then there were my children, Darren and Lisa, my two heartbeats. I never thought I'd have to say this, but I think I gave them too much. Maybe it's my fault, letting them believe that I'd always be there, that I'd always be the one to solve their problems, pay for their tuition, help them with car loans, pay for their wedding rings. I did it all because I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought that one day they'd look after me, just like I looked after them. But I never thought about the day when they wouldn't need me anymore. The first cracks started showing a few years ago. Darren, my son, always had his head in the clouds. He was charming, persuasive, things I never had the patience for. He had a knack for convincing people to do things for him, and it worked. He dropped out of college in his second year, saying he was too stressed out and needed to focus on his business ventures. I never asked him too many questions. He was my son, after all. I trusted him. Lisa, on the other hand, went on to become a nurse, and she married a nice man, Keith. They had two kids, and I was proud of them both. But then, things changed. Darren stopped visiting as often. He said he was busy with work, and when I tried to call, he didn't pick up right away. I'd leave him voicemails, just checking in, asking if he needed anything. But it was always the same. He'd call back a week later, or maybe two, with the excuse that he'd been swamped. The visits grew less frequent, and when he did show up, it was usually to ask for money. Lisa wasn't much different, though she'd always make sure to send a text once a week to check in. But still, there was something off about her, too. She was more distant, and I couldn't understand why. I'd ask them to come over for dinner, just like we used to, but it never seemed to work out. They were busy. They were too busy for me. At least, that's how I began to feel. One night, about 6 months ago, I got a call from Lisa. Her voice was more strained than usual, like she was trying to hide something. "Mom," she said, "I think it might be time for you to move into a nursing home." I froze at the words. I was stunned, hurt. I wasn't that old, not yet. I could still do most things on my own. I could cook, clean, take care of myself. "Why would you say that?" I asked. "You've been having trouble with your knees, and you're getting a little forgetful, right? You're not the same as you used to be, Mom. It's just for your own good. You need someone around who can help you." I didn't know what to say. The suggestion hit me like a ton of bricks. "I don't need a nursing home, Lisa," I protested. "I'm fine. I don't need anyone looking after me. I'm just getting older, that's all. I'm not ready for that." But Lisa's response was quiet, almost soothing. "It's not about what you're ready for, Mom. It's about what's best for you. We just want you to be safe." It wasn't just that Lisa suggested it, it was the way she said it. She didn't sound like my daughter anymore. She sounded like a stranger, someone who was giving me an order, not asking for my opinion. I was left wondering if she really cared, or if it was just easier to put me somewhere out of the way. But I agreed eventually, not because I thought I needed it, but because I didn't want to argue. It didn't take long for me to feel the sting of my decision. The nursing home wasn't what I had expected. It was quiet, sterile, and cold. It wasn't a place for people to live. It was a place where time slowed down and people waited. That's how I felt anyway. I wasn't used to being told what to do, to having someone else set the pace for my days. But Lisa insisted. "It's for your own good, Mom," she kept repeating. The first few weeks were unbearable. My knees hurt from the constant sitting, my back ached from the unfamiliar bed, and my heart felt heavy. I wanted to go home. I wanted to be in my own space where everything had meaning. But the days stretched on, and on, and on. At first, Darren came to visit. He seemed to care more than Lisa did. He'd show up with coffee and tell me about his latest business ideas, most of which seemed like nonsense to me. But I listened because I wanted to feel like I mattered, like he still saw me as his mother, as someone who had a place in his life. But then even Darren's visits began to fade. It started with him canceling once in a while. "Something came up, Mom. I'm sorry, we'll talk later." Then it was more than just a few missed visits. It was weeks before I saw him again. And when he did come, it wasn't to talk about life or how I was doing. It was to ask for money. "Mom, I need a little help with some things. You know, business expenses. The usual," he'd say, his voice sounding like he was trying to hide something behind it. "Just a few thousand to keep me going. I promise I'll pay you back." I didn't have much left. After my retirement, I wasn't exactly rolling in cash. I lived off my pension and Social Security and whatever savings I had left from my teaching days. But I'd always given Darren money, always, so I told myself it was just one more time. But the worst was yet to come. I had been living in the nursing home for almost 2 months when it happened. One morning, as I was sitting in the communal dining room, I overheard a conversation between two of the staff members. They were talking about a woman who had just moved in recently, and one of them mentioned her house being sold. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. I hadn't heard anything about anyone selling property here. The next day, I overheard another conversation. This time, it was a woman who worked in the administration office. She was on the phone, but I could hear her loud and clear. "Yeah, the house is on the market now, and we're just waiting for the paperwork to go through. Everything's in place, power of attorney and everything," she said. My heart sank. Power of attorney? My first thought was that this couldn't be about me. It couldn't be. I hadn't given anyone power of attorney. I hadn't signed any documents like that. But as I sat there, the nagging feeling grew. I had to know for sure. That afternoon, I called Lisa. The conversation started like any other, but my voice was shaking as I asked, "Lisa, what's going on with my house? Is it true? Are you selling it?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then her voice, cool, almost indifferent, said, "Mom, it's just a formality. You can't stay in that big house forever. It's too much for you now. You're better off here. The house is just an asset. We need it for your care." I didn't know what to say. I had always trusted Lisa. I had always thought she was the one who truly cared about me. But this was betrayal. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. "You're selling my house?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just business, Mom. You don't understand. You'll be taken care of, and we'll handle everything. Don't worry about it." I didn't know how to process it. The house wasn't just a building. It was my home. My life had been there, my memories, my children's laughter, the smell of Sunday dinners. And now they were going to take that from me. For money. For what? To get me out of the way so they could have more? Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't let them see me like this. I couldn't show them how badly it hurt. I want to see the paperwork, I said firmly, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Mom, please, don't make this harder than it has to be, Lisa replied. It's already done. That's when I realized the truth. My children had already made their decision. They had already made their plans, and I was just a pawn in their game. I had worked my whole life to give them everything I could, and this was how they repaid me. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Betrayal. It was the only word that could describe how I felt in that moment. My own children. They had already taken the first step to sell my house without my consent, and I was powerless to stop it. But I wouldn't stay powerless forever. I spent the next few days in a fog. The betrayal from Lisa and Darren cut deep, deeper than I ever thought possible. It was like they had stolen a piece of my soul, leaving me empty and adrift. I had given them everything, a stable home, an education, my time, my heart. But to them, it was nothing more than a transaction. They wanted what was mine, and they were willing to throw me away like some broken old thing to get it. I could feel the anger building inside me, and with it, a cold clarity. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let them get away with this, not without a fight, but I wasn't a young woman anymore. I couldn't just pick up and storm out of the nursing home. My body was weaker, my health was declining. The doctors had diagnosed me with early stages of arthritis, and I had trouble moving around some days. My joints ached, and my energy was low, but I wasn't helpless, not yet. The first thing I did was to gather every scrap of information I could. I had always been careful with my finances and my property. I kept copies of everything, my will, my bank statements, and the deeds to the house. I hadn't signed any power of attorney documents. Not that I could recall, but I knew I had to be sure. I needed to know if there was something else at play here, something that had slipped past me. I called the lawyer I had worked with years ago, Peter Turner, a man I had trusted. He'd helped me with my will and all the legal documents when my husband passed away. I had always kept him on retainer for situations like this, but I hadn't imagined I would ever need him for anything like this. Peter, it's Margaret Davis. I need your help, I said when he picked up. My voice was steady, but underneath, I could feel my heartbeat quickening. Of course, Margaret. What's going on? I'm in a nursing home right now, and I think my children are trying to take advantage of me. They've already started selling my house behind my back. I never signed a power of attorney, did I? There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him shuffling papers, probably going through my file. Let me check, he said after a moment. Give me a few minutes. I'll pull up the records. I held my breath as I waited. My mind raced with possibilities. What if they had already pulled something over on me? What if I had unknowingly signed away control of my life? But I had to trust that Peter would know. After a few more moments, Peter came back on the line. Margaret, I've got the documents here. You never signed anything giving your children power of attorney. There's no record of them having any legal claim over your assets or decisions. A weight lifted from my chest, but it was only temporary. This wasn't over. I want to change my will, I said, the words coming out with a newfound firmness. I want to make sure that if they try anything again, they don't get a penny of my estate. I want it all to go to charity. Peter's voice softened, almost cautious. Margaret, are you sure about this? Once you change the will, there's no going back. You've worked hard for that property, that home. You've built a life there. I've built a life for them too, I replied, my voice unwavering. But they're taking it all from me. They don't care about me anymore. They just want my money. It's time I take control back. He didn't argue. Instead, he agreed to meet me at the nursing home the next day to update my will and make the necessary changes. It felt like a small victory. But I wasn't done yet. I knew that if I just changed the will and did nothing else, it wouldn't be enough. I needed to take more decisive action. I began researching nursing homes and patient rights. I wanted to know how much control I had over my own life, even though I was living under their roof. I learned about legal avenues I hadn't considered, things like canceling powers of attorney if I had ever signed them, and the rights I still had as a patient. It wasn't much, but it was something. The more I learned, the clearer my next steps became. I couldn't just wait and hope that my children would change their minds. They wouldn't, and I couldn't let them keep my house. That was the heart of it, the thing they wanted most. It was the legacy I had left, and I wasn't going to let them steal it. I met with Peter the next day. It wasn't easy to do in the nursing home. The nurses kept coming in and out of the room, disrupting the flow, but I didn't care. I was determined. Peter and I updated my will to leave the house and the majority of my estate to a local charity, one that supported education for underprivileged children. The rest was to be divided among my old friends, the people who had supported me throughout my life, and a few others who had helped me along the way. Lisa and Darren would get nothing, not a single cent. Once that was done, I also had Peter help me revoke any powers of attorney that might have been issued, just in case. He filed the paperwork with the courts, and now the legal protections were in place. But the best part of it all? I didn't stop there. I was going to recover. I wasn't going to stay in this bed, in this room, waiting for them to take everything I'd worked for. I began physical therapy, slowly at first, but I pushed myself harder every day. My knees hurt, but I worked through it. My back was stiff, but I kept going, and slowly, I started to feel stronger. By the time I was ready to leave the nursing home, I was a different woman. I wasn't the quiet, passive mother they had discarded. I was someone who had fought for what was rightfully hers, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me again. It had been months since I'd made the decision to take control of my life again. Slowly but surely, I had returned to my former self, physically stronger and emotionally colder. The fog of betrayal that had clouded my thoughts had lifted. Now I was clear-headed, resolute, and I was ready to confront the people who had abandoned me, who had betrayed me in the worst way. I woke up early that morning in my apartment, a small place I rented, tucked in a quiet corner of the city. It felt like a sanctuary. No more sterile rooms in the nursing home. No more living under the thumb of my children's selfishness. I was in control now, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I had a few things left to take care of. First, I called Peter to make sure everything was in order. The legal paperwork was final, and I was officially the owner of my house once more. No one could touch it. The charity I had chosen would benefit from my estate once I passed, and for now, it was mine, safe and secure. But I wasn't finished yet. I still had one final move to make. The call came sooner than I expected. Lisa. Her voice was tight, forced, as though she was trying to sound like she hadn't been expecting this. "Mom, we need to talk. About the house," she said. "We've been trying to get in touch with you for weeks. It's been hard to reach you. I've got a few things we need to finalize. Legal stuff." I paused, looking at the phone in my hand. There was no trace of the warm, loving daughter I had raised in her voice, just a cold, business-like tone that made my stomach turn. The realization hit me once again. I was just a means to an end for her, a piece of property to be sold off. I let the silence stretch for a beat before answering. "I'm sure you've got a lot to discuss, but I think it's time we met. Why don't you come over to my place this afternoon?" Lisa hesitated. I could almost hear her trying to control her shock. Your place. Mom, what do you mean? We've got the house under control. You don't need to worry about that anymore. We've. No, I cut her off. You're mistaken. I'm not in that nursing home anymore. And as of today, I've taken back everything that belongs to me. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Finally, she spoke again, her voice sharp now, tinged with panic. Mom, what are you talking about? You can't just. I can, I interrupted, my voice steady, unwavering. I've made some changes. The house is mine, Lisa, and you and Darren are no longer in my will. In fact, you're not getting anything at all. The line went dead silent, and for a moment I allowed myself to savor the victory. The sound of her silence, her disbelief. It was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I knew would come. But I wasn't done yet. I called Darren next. Dad? His voice was casual, as though nothing had happened, as though he didn't just try to sell me off to the highest bidder. I've been trying to get a hold of you. I just wanted to go over some things. You know, with the house. I didn't let him finish. No, Darren, I know exactly what you've been up to. You and your sister have been trying to sell my house. You've been planning to take everything I worked for, everything I gave to you. But you won't get a dime, not one penny. What are you talking about? He snapped. You can't just change everything. You can't. I already did, I said, my tone unyielding. I've already revoked all the power of attorney, and I've made sure that neither you nor Lisa will get a cent. I've given my estate to charity. The house is no longer yours to sell. The anger in his voice rose. You don't have the right to do this. You can't just. Oh, I can, I said, cutting him off once more. I worked my whole life for that house, for everything, and you were supposed to be my family. But you and Lisa decided to throw me away. So now I'm throwing you out of my life. That was the final blow. Both of them had been so sure that they could take everything from me. They'd written me off like some old possession, ready to be discarded. But I'd outplayed them, and they would never see a dime. After hanging up, I sat back, allowing the finality of it all to wash over me. I had not only taken back my home and my life, but I had also found the strength to sever the ties that had bound me to the people who were supposed to love me. It wasn't just a financial victory, it was a moral one. I had proven that, despite their selfishness, I would not be their victim. A few weeks later, the legal documents were final. The house, the estate, the money, all of it was tied up in charitable donations. Lisa and Darren tried to contest it, of course, but it was useless. They had no ground to stand on. I had protected myself in every way possible. When I thought back on it, I realized something. All those years I had worked to give them a better life, college, houses, cars. I never once stopped to think about what I needed, what I wanted. It took their betrayal for me to realize that I had spent my life giving everything away, while they took it all for granted. But no more. I stood at the door of my new home, feeling the cool breeze against my face, looking out at the world with new eyes. I had started over. I wasn't the same woman I had been when this all started. I wasn't weak. I wasn't willing to let my life be dictated by anyone else's greed. I had won. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe.